Hi, everyone. I'm Sheila. Welcome back to The Truth About Death and Dying. I like to start every podcast, if I remember, with a disclaimer that I'm not an expert in any way, shape, or form, but I do have experience taking care of someone who was terminally ill and ultimately died. My hope for this podcast is to just bring different information to you, and information I think is important, and maybe stuff that if you're in the caregiving role currently, you may not consider or think about at this time, depending on where you are in your journey with your loved one who's dying. And one of my viewers, Ellen from New Hampshire. Hi, Ellen. Thank you for sending this in to me. She sent me an article about a woman who started a job or was scheduled to start a job, and in the same week her mother died, and her new employer basically paid her, gave her 6 weeks off out the gate, paid her 6 weeks to wrap up and deal with all that comes with death when someone dies, and you need to handle all that. And what I found really remarkable about it was that this new employer, she hadn't worked one day, and yet they invested in this new employee who was so grateful and blown away by the fact that this new employer was willing to do that for her. And it makes me reflect when I get something like this in my hands and I read it. I can't help but sometimes, you sit on it for a day or two, and then it starts to resonate with you, and then you start thinking about your own experience and whatnot. And so I wanted to share with you today kind of my journey with my dad and my employer, and how that all went, and how it could have gone differently, and maybe it wouldn't have gone. I don't know. It's kind of, hindsight is 2020. But so in my own scenario, my father was given a terminal diagnosis in March of 2020. And he was doing remarkably well, like all through COVID, which was crazy. Didn't have to be in the hospital, luckily. And got into 2021, and, we knew it was coming. We knew, and we were like, this ride can't go on forever. We knew that wasn't possible, but my dad was doing so well for so long, living independently and all that. Meanwhile, I had been working for the state of Maine for nearly 14 years. Had a great track record. I showed up for work. I did my job well. I had a lot of great colleagues that I loved working with. Got a lot of good kudos from my supervisors over the years, and, just in good standing. And so then with COVID at the beginning, it was very unsure. We all know it was very unsure and where this thing was going. So my employer, they were allowing people to work from home, but where I worked, in the building that I worked in, there was a superintendent, and the superintendent wanted somebody in my department, which was HR, 5 days a week. So then we were given the choice to, split up the week, work some days from home, work some days from the office. And I was just not in the mindset to drag my things back and forth. So I opted to stay in the office. And then at one point, it was determined that we were not going to be there at all. They were shutting down our office. We were all going to work remotely. Okay, no problem. So I was going along. This was 2021 when this went on. So not even at the height of when COVID first came in. And so I now am working from home. Everything's fine. And then, my dad, during the summertime, he started having some really big shoulder pain. And, I didn't know if it had moved into his bones, or if it was something unrelated. And that's one thing about being on hospice, is that something like this, they may not treat, because they're going to think, oh, it's the cancer. Well, no. And that's where you need to step up and be an advocate for somebody that's on hospice, and say, well, hold on, can we get an x-ray? That's what I did. I said, can we get an x-ray on this and just find out if it's the cancer? or if it's something else that maybe we can treat, that's not killing him yet. And so it turned out that my dad had super bad arthritis, and we gave him a little bit of morphine, and it took care of the problem. Everything was great. But it caused me to be out of work for a couple of days because I needed to take care of him. I had, at that time, intermittent family medical leave, and I had consistent family leave set up for when my dad needed me to be there all the time, and I could no longer focus on both, on work and my dad. So at the time, I had the intermittent FML, and I had let my colleague at work know that I was going to take the day off because I needed to take care of my dad and get him straightened out, see what was going on. And that afternoon, I had run back home for a minute, and I got a phone call from, I don't know if this woman is technically a supervisor of mine, really, but she was up the food chain a bit in our department. And she got me on a conference call with the director of my department and my new supervisor, who I had not met yet. And it felt like a complete ambush. I was yelled at. I was reprimanded because I hadn't told anyone I was not going to be there, which was not true. And meanwhile, I'm lacking sleep. I'm really concerned about my dad. And all I'm getting is this bitchy threesome of people just at me. And I was just like, what the fuck? Excuse my language, but what the fuck? And I mean, I had not ever just not gone to work or not let someone know I wasn't going to be at work. It's just not who I am. So anyway, got through that and got through my dad's incident with the shoulder. And so we had some more time with him, which was good. And so moving along, it came to the first part of September. And the state of Maine decided that, everyone needs to go back to the office. We can't have paper. We can't have printers. We can't have any, sensitive information in homes anymore. And I was like, did we have a breach? No breach. Just suddenly this magic day showed up, and that was the end of it. So I'm on a Zoom call with my department, and the director of this department said to me, what can you do for your job? I do payroll, or I did payroll, I should say. So I had to have paper. I had to have things. I had to have information in front of me. I said, I can't do much of my job. She said, well, I guess you'll start your family leave then on this day. And I was just like, wait a second, I'm not ready to start my FML. Like, I can still function. I can still work. I can still but my father was a fall risk. I couldn't leave him alone. But that director was just, nope, done. This is it. Like, she was not willing to work with me. And so anyway, so I was like, okay, I guess I'll start my family medical leave. But I didn't have a lot of benefit time banked. And so I was like, maybe a couple of weeks of pay, and then I was unpaid. And unpaid until my dad died in November. So we're talking like 2.5 months of no pay. So in the meantime, my colleague and I at work were trying to work out a way that we could get me back on the payroll, get me at least part-time work, get some money coming in. And so we came up with this idea. We took it to our immediate supervisor, who was on board immediately. Then they channeled it up to the director, and she put a big fat no on it. So right from that point on, prior to that, I had some issues with this director to begin with, but I was willing to, overcome it, thinking, all right, you know what? This is a stressful time. COVID's here. My dad is dying. There's a lot going on. But the fact that she was just completely shut off to helping me through this time spoke volumes about my place in the food chain in the state of Maine, working for the state of Maine. So now I'm not making any money. And on top of all that, this director knew that I was not getting paid. The supervisors below her knew I wasn't getting paid. And in the state of Maine, they do something called a catastrophic bank. So like if you're having to be out of work and you don't have enough time, other employees can donate their time to help, get you paid so that you can take care of business. And not one of them offered to do this cat bank for me. Sorry. So that was kind of a kick in the face too. And so, and then my dad, on top of all of this, my dad, when my colleague and I were talking about ways of getting me back to work, my dad had a complete meltdown on me. And it was about something completely unrelated, but I knew where he was coming in from. I knew what he was getting at. And the fact that I was not going to have full attention on him was not okay with him. So I was like, you know what, Dad, don't worry about it. It's not going to work anyway. I'm just going to keep on trucking. I don't know how I'm going to pay my bills. And my dad knew I was not getting paid. Now, my clear-headed father, without cancer running through his body, would have been like, oh my God, let me help supplement. Let me help you. Here's some money for you to cover your bills while you're taking care of me. Like, I know this, like I know my own name. But my dad was not of that mindset. So he never once offered to compensate or help me out, or like, hey, what's the minimum I can help you with to just keep you moving along, you know? So it was a very difficult place to be in. And at the time, my ex-husband and I, were separated. So there was a lot going on in my world where I was not feeling very supported. And, you know, it would have made a world of difference if, one, the director recognized that I was going through this very difficult time and offered to give me some kind of work to do that I could do from home that didn't require paper or anything else. And, you know, or to set up a cat bank for me to help me get through it, to be like, oh, you know what, we value you as an employee, so let me do this for you to get you through this time. There was none of that. She's a horrible person. I'm just going to say it. She's a horrible person. And I will never work for someone like that again, her or anyone else. So when I read this story about this new employer of this woman, like, this is, you know, me, my dad dies, and then, oh, I'm supposed to start this job, and they're like, you know what, take your time. Here's 6 weeks of time to just get things, you know, moving. You're going to grieve for years. Like, the grief just never ends. I'm still grieved for my dad. But what blows my mind is that in this world, in this day and age, the state of Maine gives you for a parent to die is 40 hours. 40 hours of bereavement leave. That's it. And that's more than most do, which isn't saying much. So if anyone has dealt with having to wrap up a person's life to get their funeral taken care of, get them buried, get them, you know, and then in my dad's case, he didn't own the house he was in. He rented it. So we paid an extra month's rent just to have that extra time to clean out all his belongings. How do you do that in 40 hours? How do you do that in 1 week, 1 working week's time? You can't do it. You don't even begin grieving at 40 hours. Like, it's ridiculous. It's ridiculous that this country doesn't offer a longer bereavement leave like they do for giving birth to a baby. Or, you know, and the family medical leave, when you have family medical leave for someone that's dying, like in my case, I had the FML for my dad, but the second he dies, the second he takes that last breath, it's done. Your FML is over. So now you're just, okay, now I'm just twisted in the wind here, you know. So it's ridiculous to me to think that, you know, that people think that you can wrap this stuff up that quickly. In the state of Maine, it used to be, it's been a while since I've worked there now, but if one of my brothers would die, 3 days, 24 hours, that's what you get. So take it and be grateful for it. And I want to read a couple of other these scenarios. And I reached out to this guy, Elijah Linder, who is the co-founder of Bereave, and it's a Bereave platform helping businesses and employees navigate grief and death. I think this is wonderful. I'd love to be able to get him on the show. I don't know if I can, but I'm going to try, because I think it's really an important topic to talk about, especially because there's just so much you don't think about when you're in the throes of taking care of someone that you love who is dying, who's on their way out of here. You're concentrated on that. You're concentrated on, you know, their comfort, their needs. That's what so you don't think about, oh, when this actually happens, when they die, now what? I got to go back to work. Still got to bury them. I got to clean out their house. I've got to, you know, and then I got to find some time to grieve. Well, in there, it's ridiculous. It really is ridiculous, you know. And so I feel like, for one, this new employer that gave this woman 6 weeks of paid leave right out the gate, I feel like he either went through a similar situation or was probably fresh off of maybe a death that was very close to him. But I feel like that's just not something that most people would think about. They don't think about, wow, this employee, interviewed really well. I think she'd be a great asset to the team. And so what harm is it? Because most businesses want to make money. They don't want to put out money extra, for any reason if they can help it. So, I just feel like this boss probably had gone through something similar, and maybe someone treated him like I was treated. And so maybe wanted to change that narrative going forward, which I think is fantastic. So, a couple other, these were a couple of other stories that had come through. This one was said, I just hired and relocated a guy and his family. I think he was there not much more than a month after the family relocated. One day jogging, he had a heart attack and passed away. The HR manager picked up the phone and called payroll and told them to keep the paychecks coming to his wife until he told them otherwise. And knowing she had just moved, she left friends and family behind. He gave her a choice. She could stay in her new home, or if she wanted to return to her previous venue, the company would pay to relocate her back. I think she opted to return and made a deep impression on everyone. It doesn't take that much to be kind to other people, especially people who are suffering a serious loss, and something like that that's just tragic, quick, no warning, no nothing. Here's another story. We recently heard about a manager who had a teammate that lost a child. The teammate took 30 days away from work. When he came back, the manager told him to delete all of his emails, told him not to worry about catching up, told him to start fresh and that he'd support him in doing so. How is that for signaling, we got you? Here's another story. I have two more stories I want to share. I just think these are really great. And I hope that if there's anyone out there that's an employer, maybe you'll incorporate some of these ideas, or just take these into consideration when somebody in your employ is going through something like this, and find different out of the box ways to support that person. It doesn't take a lot to make a big difference in someone's life, especially just it's such a heavy burden to carry that the smallest kindness that someone can show you makes a huge difference. This one was, I lost my wife of 20 years when I was 44. It was cancer. 21 days for diagnosis to death. My company said the same. 3 days of bereavement. I had been with the company for 20 plus years. My boss said, take all the time you need. You will continue to get paid. If anyone says anything to you, tell them to contact me. I will always be grateful that my boss stood by me. What would that be like? I don't know. Anyway, sorry. Oh, sorry. I guess that's my last story. There was just a little added extra on there. Sorry about that. I thought that I was not paying that close attention to it. I thought there was another story to add. But so the bottom line is, I guess today my message is, be an advocate for yourself. And I know it's hard, and it's and I say that now, and I think, well, if I could jump back to 2021, would I have said to one of, some of my work colleagues, hey guys, I'm not getting paid. Do you think one of you could initiate a cat bank for me? I would really appreciate it. Maybe it'd be great to get paid while I'm taking care of my dad who's dying. But I didn't do that. I didn't. And I think part of me thought, why don't they think of this on their own? And I mean, and you can't put that on people. I feel like that's unfair for me to have, thought that, or, and I'm sure I did think it, and I'm sure I was resentful for a spell. I'm not anymore. I just, I have to let that go, because it's my own fault that I didn't, say to the director or one of the supervisors, is there, I probably would have been denied anyway, because I feel like that's how little my director, or the director at the time, liked me. She's not a nice person. And so, but if I had advocate, and I tried, I tried to get family medical leave for myself. that was a no-go. I tried to withdraw from my retirement, no, not from my state retirement, but my VALIC account. Oh no, that taking care of someone that's dying doesn't fall into our category of like, things that were acceptable to get to draw early. So thanks for that. So I have to quit my job in order to withdraw that money to pay the debts that I couldn't pay while I was unpaid working. So it's a whole nightmare scenario. So so just if you're in that caregiving role, like I was, like, working full time or not working full time, taking care of your loved one full time, unable to work. If you are one of those people that never takes a vacation and you have all kinds of time on your books, great. But most people don't. Most people don't have that. And so if you have the capability to get some time donations from your colleagues, if that's something that your company does, please do it. Don't suffer in silence like I did. And then be like, why isn't anybody helping me? Why isn't anybody helping me? I'm trying to help my dad. Why isn't anybody helping me? And so, I did advocate a bit for myself, but not in the avenues that probably would have been good. And to cap it all off, so when I quit, my dad died on November 5th, and I tendered my resignation like probably that afternoon or maybe the next day. I can't remember. And then I wrote like a 7-page letter about why I was quitting and how I'd been treated and all of that. And I sent it to the governor and then the commissioner and like the 4 ladies from the governor down, just below the director who I was not going to get the satisfaction of sending that to. And I didn't get one reply. I didn't even get a response like, thank you for your email. So another big kick in the face from the state of Maine. So thanks for that, everybody. But so that's just, so I did think, well, and I thought after the fact, like, well, maybe if I send this letter to the governor, they might go, oh, hold on a second. We don't want this girl to quit. She's a good worker. Look at this track record. Look what all she's done for the great state of Maine, but that just wasn't the case. It just wasn't the case. They just, they've got this rotating door of employees, which is really too bad. And working in HR, I saw them let great employees just walk out the door without trying to stop them, without going, wait, before you go, is there anything we can do to keep you here? What can we do? And sometimes you can't do anything. That's a fact. But anyway, so that was unfortunate because I did love my job. I loved my job. And I used to go in and just be like, and my colleagues would be like, my coworkers and friends would be like, yeah, you won't always feel that way. But I did, up until the last 2 years. And so I'm angry about that too, because I thought, if things had just gone a little different and I'd just gotten a little more support, I'd still be working for the state. But anyway, that's my spiel today. I just when things come up like this and they start, kind of gnawing at me, I feel like it's important to talk about it because, again, I wish somebody had come back and whispered in my ear and been like, hey, go tell your work friends that you need money and you need them to initiate a cat bank for you. But I didn't do that. So, it's hard to reach out, and in some cases, the community comes together and they're just throwing money and stuff at you, and that's great. And I think that's wonderful. I think that should happen for everybody, but it doesn't. So if you're in that situation where you are the primary caregiver and you are taking time off from work and you're not getting paid, or, you're worried that maybe that time is running to an end, reach out to somebody that you can trust within your work community and see what can be done to help you out. They should want to keep you. Because if you're a good enough human to take care of someone that's dying, you're probably a good employee too, I feel like. Probably. But anyway, that's all I have for you today. If you happen to like this episode and the other episodes, please like and subscribe to my channel. I would really appreciate the support. It won't cost you a dime. And until next time, I hope you have a gentle journey and wish you nothing but peace and love. Thanks for coming. Thanks for stopping by.